Here is a summary of American cultural and political dysfunction, all wrapped up in one depressing story. Hi everyone, I'm Jeff, and you are listening to Plain English, the best way to upgrade your English with current events and trending topics. JR is the producer. He has uploaded all of today's lesson resources to plainenglish.com/517. Coming up today, America's dysfunctional immigration system has become, if anything, even worse, as border state governors are playing tricks on northern cities and immigrants are caught in the middle. It's an unfortunate illustration of the breakdown in America's politics and culture. In the second half of the lesson, we'll talk about the English expression, find your way, and we have a song of the week. Let's get going. For as long as I can remember, America has had a problem on its southern border. The problem is basically this. The American economy needs lower wage workers, but it doesn't provide a legal way to fill those jobs. So the incentives are high for migrants from Mexico and other parts of Latin America to cross the border illegally. There's always a job for an immigrant here, even without legal authorization to work. An illegal border crossing is dangerous, though. The U.S. and Mexico share a 3,000-kilometer-long border. About half of that is represented by the Rio Grande River. At a few points, the border divides two cities, one on the American side and one on the Mexican side. But most of the border area is rural or uninhabited. It's harsh desert with punishing terrain. The number of people crossing the border ebbs and flows with the economy, conditions in home countries, and the political climate in the U.S. Joe Biden, the Democratic president of the U.S., has shown a compassionate attitude toward migrants. The American job market is white hot, and the humanitarian conditions in some parts of Central America seem worse than ever. So in the last few years, a lot more people have made the treacherous journey north through Mexico and across the U.S. border. 2022 has already set a record for arrests at the border, and it's only October. Many migrants cross the border and find their way to towns and cities across the country based on networks of friends, family, and others from their home regions. Other people arrive without such connections and try to assimilate into the regions where they arrived. Immigration, even undocumented immigrants without the legal right to work, they are all a net positive to our economy and our country. However, there are transition costs for migrants who have recently arrived. Schools, hospitals, and local humanitarian aid organizations all struggle to serve the flow of migrants into a relatively small border zone. This is a situation where our federal system is not working. The flow of migrants across the border is a failure of the national government's immigration policy, but it's local governments that supply schooling and healthcare, and local organizations that serve migrants in their first weeks and months until they get settled. And this, understandably, has local governments and residents feeling frustrated that they have to bear a disproportionate burden of the national government's failure. You could imagine a situation where border states work with the national government and other states to process the arrival of immigrants, find them transportation, and help them get settled in the place that makes the most sense for them. That sounds like something a functioning nation could and should be able to do. That is not what's happening. Instead, the governors of Texas and Arizona have spied a cynical opportunity. They are putting newly arrived migrants on buses and sending them on a one-way journey to northern cities: New York, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., among others. This is significant because northern cities have advocated looser immigration policies. However, those northern cities haven't had to accommodate an influx of newly arrived immigrants. The border states, however, are where the problem is most acute. So border state governors decided to send a message to northern cities. They put asylum seekers and other migrants on a days-long bus ride and dumped them in the middle of New York City with no help or assistance. How does New York like loose immigration policies now? These governors wondered out loud. Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, howled in protest. So far, about 17,000 migrants have arrived in New York City on buses without any warning. The mayor publicly complained that this is unfair. He said that New York never agreed to offer public services to so many people, and that the city's resources are being strained by the arrival of so many migrants. The border state governors smirk in response. New York, a city of 8 million people, declared a state of emergency to deal with 17,000 migrants. This is a tiny fraction of the problem that much smaller communities along the border have been dealing with for years. The tactic, as inhumane as it is, appears to be working. It's great political theater in the border areas, appealing to immigration-weary voters. And of course, it appeals to people who don't want any immigration at all. In fact, it's such good theater that the governor of Florida has joined the fun, flying migrants to wealthy areas of Massachusetts. Never mind that Florida isn't even a border state. This is such a tragedy. Individual states can come to the rescue when the national government fails. This was true with gay marriage and the legalization of marijuana. In this case, though, individual states have taken a national failing and made it worse. And national politics are just too divided to deal with this issue. Now, for a long time, states tended to have less divisive politics. So in cases like this, states can kind of lower the temperature and focus on the daily work of government, like settling migrants. But now, all the big national fights, the big national divisions, are reflected in state politics, even city politics too. Now, this just feels like such a solvable problem. Big cities need the migrants for labor. Border states need help processing them. The labor market is good. It's not like the border migrants are taking jobs from Americans. You could imagine this being a good moment to fix the national problem. But it's just too good of a campaign issue for both sides. If they solved the problem, each side would be robbing itself of some good campaign commercial material. What a mess. Today's English expression is find your way. When you find your way, you have a destination and you don't exactly know how to get there, but you figure it out. You have a place you need to get to. You're not sure exactly how, but you manage to get there. You find your way. Let me give you a few examples. Imagine you are visiting friends or family in a new city and you're staying with them in their home. You all go out for dinner and drinks later. Now it's getting late and you're ready to get to bed. So you tell your friends, I think I'm going to go back. But you don't want to stop the party. You don't want your friends to have to go home with you. So you tell your friends, I can find my way back. I can find my way back means I don't know precisely how to get back home from here, but I can figure it out. I have Google Maps. I might be able to take an Uber. I can figure it out. Don't worry about taking me home. I can find my way back. Now, we've all heard stories of lost dogs or cats that somehow find their way home. Dogs have a great sense of smell and direction, so if they get lost, they can sometimes find their way back home. They don't know exactly how to get there, but they use their sense of smell and direction to find their way home. In today's lesson, we were talking about immigrants who crossed the southern border of the United States. Some people arrive without a destination in mind, but many people cross the border with some idea of where they'll go. And the destination is usually based on connections with family, friends, or others from their home region. When people arrive, just in those first few days, they need help in the border area, closest to where they crossed or where they were released by immigration. But in the next few weeks, they typically find their way to their destination: New York, Chicago, Maryland, New Jersey, California, wherever. They find their way. They might not know how to get from Brownsville, Texas to New York City, but they find their way. They have a general destination in mind, and they figure out how to get there. It's time for JR's Song of the Week. This is an old one and a classic. You're So Vain by Carly Simon. Vanity is a negative personality trait. If you're vain, you're worried too much about your appearance or your own accomplishments. It's like being a little too proud of yourself in an unhealthy way. There's a funny line in the song that goes like this: You're so vain, you probably think this song is about you. In other words, you think so much about yourself that you probably think this song is about you. But the song is about how the singer moved on from her relationship with the vain person in question. You're So Vain by Carly Simon is the song of the week. Thanks, JR. And that's all for today's Plain English. Remember, this was lesson number 517, so you can find the full lesson at plainenglish.com/517. The full lesson includes a step-by-step video walkthrough, and today's video shows you exactly how to use the phrase for as long as. So if you're not exactly sure what for as long as means, then you'll want to check out today's video lesson online at plainenglish.com/517. We'll be back on Monday with a brand new Plain English. See you then.